Joining me on this episode of the Idea Sharing Project is Adrian Birrell. Adrian Birrell is a former head coach for Ireland, the first coach to take them to the World Cup. He is also a former Proteas assistant head coach and is currently the head coach at Hampshire County Cricket Club, where he is the head coach. Adi, thank you for joining me on the Idea Sharing Project.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Adi, I think I left out quite a bit of your resume as I was introducing you. You have played cricket previously. And I think one of the things that I saw when I was trying to do a little bit of a quick investigation was that you felt that at some point in your career, you didn't get enough opportunities to play.
You know, I sort of stumbled onto coaching at a young age. And so I was coaching from, you know, during my playing days. In those days, you couldn't earn enough from cricket to just play cricket. So everyone had other jobs. And my other job was coaching. And so I sort of gravitated to coaching more than playing. But I continued playing. But I was always a fringe player. I was never any great shakes. It's probably the best thing I could do was go into coaching because I'm still coaching. And I wouldn't have had a long career playing wise.
So at what age did you start coaching?
About 24, I think. I started coaching. There was a very forward-thinking politician in those days. It was sort of before 1990, before unity took place, and because of my ability to speak Xhosa, I was sort of asked to coach in the townships. So I spent about 9 years in the Port Elizabeth townships coaching, and so I started from a very young age coaching. So I was a young guy, and I was coaching mainly in the townships, and then from there it went to Eastern Province underage teams and slowly built my way up. But my grounding is township cricket, actually.
And how was the experience, coaching in the township?
Well, it was, it was very difficult at the time because obviously the politics, of the country was at a knife edge. And, it was a little bit before 1990. I sort of started full-time January 1986. So the last 4 years and then into unity was also a tricky time because two different parties, boards came together to play as one. And it was, it was a fantastic time, but also a very trying time. And so, you learn how to negotiate, and it's not all about cricket, and it's about personalities, about dealing with people, and it's about logistics, about how to get teams to play cricket where there's no cricket facilities. It was difficult times. So it was not just coaching. It was, it was about organizing facilities, organizing kit, and, obviously dealing with a very difficult situation that the country was in at that time.
And this difficult period, how do you feel it shaped you as a coach after moving on from then?
Well, I think it taught me how to deal with people, how to man management, they call it now. It's just people management, really. And that's, as a head coach, you coach, but you're not really a coach. You're a manager almost. You're a manager of people. So where I am coaching now, it's about selection. It's about team tactics. It's about looking at the conditions and the opposition and coming up with a plan to try and win a cricket match. It's not about, whether the guy's hands are, in the right place playing a certain stroke, or the grip on the cricket ball. It's more strategic than it is technical. And so, yeah, I'm very fortunate that I've done the whole spectrum of coaching. And, this is where I'm at now, which would be a strategic kind of job. But I always refer back to the 9 years in the townships where I really had a good grounding, because it wasn't easy. And, it was teaching you that cricket's not just about throwing a ball at a batsman and hitting, letting him play. There's a lot more to it, because he needs a bat, and you need balls, and you need pads, and you need facilities, and and so the job I was doing was to try and get all of those put together before you even have a team. So it was the full sort of cross reference of cricket, which was taught to me in those first years of coaching.
And as I was reading up, I saw that when you took over with Ireland in the noughties, there's a phrase that caught my eye that was attributed to you, that you were leaving no stone unturned as you were building the team.
Yeah, I think that's a common term, used in a lot of sports and a lot of businesses, and just to try and do whatever is possible to try and get your team to perform at the highest level that they possibly can. And so it was making sure that we would do everything possible and think of ways, I also called it the 1% theory of innovation, of doing small things that might make a difference, but they also might not. But if you do enough of those small things, then you do get an advantage over your opposition. And so it was all the time is thinking about what you can do with your team that other teams might not be doing. And so you get a strategic advantage by doing that, I think.
And one of the things that I like talking about a lot is culture, team culture, and what is your approach when it comes to that?
Yeah, team culture is like a sort of modern buzzword about teamwork, really. It's about just put new names to it, but it's old-fashioned teamwork. How do you get team culture, and what's behind it? It's about having certain parameters that the team will play, will play to, and it's about having a team identity, and it's about having team goals, and it's about having a sort of unified way of how you would play and your discipline in the team. But there's in all teams that are high performing teams would all have a higher purpose that they would play for. There's something bigger than just the team. They'd be playing for a certain for maybe some history, or they would be playing for a cause. But there's got to be a higher purpose of trying to of what is behind the culture in the team. And so I think identifying what that is. In our case, it's Hampshire hasn't won a county championship since 1973, and so it's there's a higher purpose in that. It's been a hell of a long time before they've since they last won a championship, and so that higher purpose is to try and get another one, and not and try and do something that other teams haven't done over the last almost 50 years almost. It's incredible that it was Barry Richards and Gordon Greenwich that won the championship for Hampshire in those days, and it hasn't been done since. And so all the time you're talking about the history and what a great legacy that you could leave by winning something like that. And that sort of is driving the culture, is to play for something bigger than just trying to win a game of cricket.
And you mentioned identity. Can you explain the importance of having a good, vibrant team identity?
Well, it's very important because you got to play to a certain way. You got to have a certain. If you look at a team and you see how they play, you'd say, and they didn't have uniforms, you'd say, oh well, that's this team, that team, and it's a way of playing that's different to others, and it's very difficult to achieve because we're all playing the same game. There's 11 players on each side, and you're trying to make more runs than the other team. So it's a difficult one to achieve, but you try and get a certain way of playing that suits your team. So you look at your strengths and weaknesses, and you'll come up with a pattern of play. You could call it a pattern of play, but it's a way of playing in a certain way that is to the benefit of your strengths.
One of the things that I'm thinking of right now is you have coached through different stages, but they have also been different in terms of culture, societal culture, from the townships to the national teams. And then right now with Hampshire in the UK, it's all different societies that you're coaching in. How do you merge all that to help you in your coaching? Is there any culture shock, or it's just seamless for you?
No, I think by living in South Africa as I've done my whole life, it's a great example of tolerance because of our history and our different cultures. And I think as South Africans, we're very in tune with different people. And I wouldn't say it's a long history of this, but certainly since 1990, we're a lot more tolerant of each other's cultures, of each other's races, of each other's religions. And so there's, I think it teaches us that tolerance that is very important. And so coming to the UK, we can actually lead it, where I've got a Mohammed Abbas, who's a Muslim guy who's from Pakistan, and he's playing for Hampshire. And we as South Africans are more in tune with his culture and what, and Ramadan and Eid, which is now about, on Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday this week. Wednesday and Thursday this week. And we can actually teach the other people to be more interested in each other's in each other's religions and cultures. And I think we almost taught that by being South Africans, and it's a great advantage because I don't think people in Europe have that same tolerance that we have and interest in each other's differences. And I think we always hear in South Africa, diversity is strength, or a team's strength is in its diversity. And so I think we are able to use that, and I'm able to teach that where in other areas that I coach, or other countries that I've coached in.
And cricket, when I look at it as a fan, I realize that batters have a tendency to fail a lot because that's how the sport is. It's not just smooth sailing success all the time. There's a high failure rate when you're batting. And batters sometimes go on a very dry spell. They're trying everything, but the runs are just not coming. And if you are dealing with the players directly, how do you help them overcome that period of no runs?
Well, I always use Jacques Kallis as an example. And, as South Africans go, in recent times, he's been the best player that we've produced, and he averaged 56. And so if he played a match and he made less than 56, it's probably a failure for him. And so he's only going to be successful 1 in 3 innings or 1 in 4 innings. And so if that's success, where you're only actually going to be happy in one in 4 innings, what do the rest of us, how difficult is it for the rest of us? And sometimes you put it like that to a player and they can calm down and sort of get a little bit more patient and say, okay, I'm not far off the mark. I've had a few low scores, but I'm only 1 innings away from a big score. But, you've also got to look at them technically and make sure that there's nothing, that he's not falling over straight ones and getting LBW or nicking off to balls in the channel or playing too wide, defensive shots too wide. So you got to look at the guy technically to make sure that there's nothing that is causing him to get out. But then you got to, try and use your sort of common sense about what are realistic, expectations for that player. And if you use Jacques Kallis as example, it usually puts a player at ease to say, okay, Jacques Kallis also failed, and he failed sort of 3 out of 4 times, or certainly 2 out of 3 times. And he was the greatest player that we've produced in recent times. Well, if I have 4 failures, I'm not far off if I can get a score in the next one.
These days, there's a lot of talk on environment, dressing room environment. There's a lot of emphasis when people talk about that. And one thing that always comes back to me is the fact that you can never get everyone to be friends. It's impossible. And teammates are always going to clash or not like each other, not invite each other for braai afterwards. Yeah. But how do you keep a team functioning even in times where there is conflict between the players themselves?
No, I think you're right in saying not all teams get on, not all players get on. But as long as everyone trusts their each other, that they're going to give 100% and know that they're going to fight through any situation, and have common team goals, and and sort of certain roles that they have within a team, then I think you can still achieve great things. Not it's like a marriage. We marry, but many marriages end up in divorce. They're not all happy marriages. And we got a team of 11 individuals trying to have a happy marriage, and it doesn't work. So I think we sometimes a happy team is not a high achieving team, as well. But it comes through, the high performance or high achieving teams come through that they trust that player will fight through any situation. That you'd like to go to war, with this player because he's tough and he can absorb pressure and he knows his role in the team, and the team, all 11 players, will know what the goal is and what they're trying to achieve as a unit. And actually the person to person relationships are not at the forefront of that. It's important, you can't just be fighting all the time, because that will erode those other things that you're trying to achieve. But you've got to sort of have certain things in place that will enable a team to achieve.
And there's also another term that gets thrown out these days: bad apples. And the assumption is that almost every team might have one within them. And how do you deal with such people who disrupt dressing room environment, or the bad apples, as they call them?
Very often those guys are the higher achievers, and it's a very fine line between having a bad apple who's like your best player, and a bad apple that destroys, the important things that are in the team. And so you as a coach or a leader or a manager has got to decide, well, when does it start destroying a team, and when does it actually help a team to achieve? Because sometimes a bad apple, you might have a few bad spots, but he's not rotten all through. And you've got to try and bring the good out of that bad apple. There might be still half of it that's edible. So you got to try and make sure that bad apple is not destructive, but is but that bad apple can maybe drive the teammates through expecting big things. But as soon as it starts destroying team culture, well, then that bad apple's probably going to have to go, because no one is indispensable in a team. There's no player in history that that's more important than than the rest of the team. So sort of live by that. The strength of a team is greater than the sum of its parts, and sometimes if you have one part that that's a high achiever and a bad apple, you got to decide how high achieving is he? Is he winning matches for us? And do we just try and manage that bad apple, or is he unmanageable? And the moment he's unmanageable, well, then he's got to go, and the team will continue.
And these days there's a movement, I think I will say, of statistical and analysts who are coming up. There's so much that people are doing with the numbers. And as a coach, what is your approach to using them or not using them?
We use them quite a lot. So I think it's very important to know what are past scores at a certain ground. I like to know what the first day, second day, third day, fourth day average scores are. You also like to know, what teams do with the toss in certain conditions. You like to know what the averages are for spinners and seamers on certain days throughout a match. So you get parameters of these are the stats of the ground. That's the first thing about analysis. The next thing about analysis is looking at the opposition and what their strengths and weaknesses are, bowling and batting, and you come up with a strategy to counter the strengths of an opposition and exploit the weaknesses. So you need to look at analysis and look at videos and look at recent ways that say a batsman has got out. And then you look at the bowler, what his stock ball is, and certainly in white ball cricket is how many bounces he bowls at the end. In the death overs, where does a bowler tend to go? Does he go Yorkers, or does he go bounces, or does he go into the pitch with cutters? So you can expect, because of his history, you can expect a certain way that he's going to bowl at you. So you do all that preparation. I think it's very important, because then you can come up with strategies to counter the strengths of an opposition and exploit the weaknesses, as I've said earlier.
Oh, that's great. As we were talking, I was thinking again, from all your coaching, what stands out as the best, either period or the best year or the best 5 years? The one period that never leaves you, that made the biggest impression on you.
I think I've coached for probably 36 years. I think I don't know how long I've been coaching, but it's over 30 years. And there are good times and bad times. Now with Hampshire, we've just been beaten terribly in the last 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago, we had just come off 2 big wins and a draw. And then we get beaten terribly. So, that's exactly what coaching's about. You have these good times and you have the bad times. And right now I'm in a bad time. But, on Thursday we go to Lords and we play Middlesex. And who knows, we might win that match and then it's a good time again. So I don't know what's the best time, but there's certain successes that have happened throughout any career, and I've had them as well. But I think what's important as a coach that you don't get too carried away with your successes and not too down when you lose, which is difficult. I mean, I've been down in the last 2 weeks because we've played terribly as a team and we've let ourselves down. And as a coach, you take responsibility. And so it's difficult because you have these highs and lows. And I keep telling myself, don't get too low, because if you do the right things, you'll win again. And hopefully, you look for the next opportunity to win a match. And our next opportunity is Thursday.
You spoke about that you were feeling down because the team did not do well. And I was thinking now, cricket is one of those funny sports where it's very individual, but it's also a team sport. So there needs to be sort of a balancing act. And sometimes there's that trade-off. Either the player puts the team first, or the team has to put the player first, maybe for a milestone or something. And sometimes the player has to forgo that for the benefit of the team. How do you handle such situations where a trade-off has to be made?
Well, you again look at, what's the most important for the team. And sometimes there is a trade-off, but you try and do what's best for the team all the time and not too much for the individual, because it is a team sport. Although it's 11 individuals, and when the batsmen are batting, they're batting for themselves, but they're playing for their teammates. And the bowler, there's only one bowler at a time, bowling one ball at a time. So, it's an individual sport at that time, but he's supported by all his teammates because he needs the wicketkeeper and the slips and the backward point and the different fielders to do their job to support him. So it might be him bowling, but he can't bowl without his teammates' support. And a batsman can't bat without another batsman batting with him. So it is an individual sport, but it's the unique sport because you're so interdependent on each other that it becomes a team sport. And so you've got to err towards what's best for the team rather than what's best for the individual.
All right. And sport, one thing that I've read, I would like your opinion on it, is that sport mirrors society a lot. How we behave on the field is also how we are most likely to behave out there. Are there any lessons that we can take from sports, from watching sports, from participating in them, and applying them outside of that?
Well, definitely cricket's one of the greatest sort of teachers of life, because you've got to work as a team. You 11 individuals forced into a room, and then you have your team talks, and then you're forced onto a field, and you're forced to work with each other. And there's role playing, and then there's success and failure, and then there's supporting guys when they're down, and then there's accolades of one person achieving greatness when he makes 100, and all those things. It mirrors life, because our lives, it's so up and down, but we also don't live our lives in isolation. We need people around us. We need our family support. You need your colleagues at work to support you. And so cricket's a great teacher of life, because there's so many lessons that we learn from this sport. And so I would encourage any parent to get their children to play team sports, because it's really great. It's a great lesson for for later on in life. And cricket is one of the greatest, sports to mirror life. Yeah.
And oh, what was I saying now? Okay, sorry. I just lost my train of thought there. But okay, do you also watch other sports for lessons, for inspiration on how to work with your team and stuff like that?
Yeah, we look at other sports and look at other teams and try and get good lessons that we look at successful teams, and we try and get that success and look at how they've achieved success, and you try and mirror that in your team. And I think that's coaching. You look all around you for inspiration. And so wherever you can get that inspiration, I think is very important for you as a coach, because I talk about having my coach's toolbox, and my toolbox has many tools, and only a few of those tools are my very own tools that I made. There's so many stolen tools there from this coach, and he says something and I go, wow, I like that, I'll put that into my toolbox. And then someone outside of cricket might say something, or you observe something and you say, wow, I like that. And then you put it into your toolbox. And all the time as a coach, you've got this toolbox that is, that has many tools already in, but it's never a complete set. And so all the time I'm looking for new tools. And a week won't go by when I haven't put something else into that toolbox. So what I have is on my computer is Adrian Birrell's coaching toolbox, and I will then add to it when I see something. And it's got batting and bowling and fielding, and it's got man management, and it's got teamwork, and it's got fitness, and there are a whole lot of headings in that toolbox, each with a list of tools, and that I can use at any stage. So I've got this toolbox, which is my method of coaching. And so I always encourage young coaches to start a toolbox, and then every now and again you'll say, oh, well, this situation requires that tool, so I'll use that tool for this situation. And you keep adding to it. But you get those tools mainly from other people.
And do you have any particular sport or team that you think influences you the most from your collection of tools in your toolbox?
Mainly other coaches. I'm quite fortunate that I work with, 8 or 9 coaches. That I'm the head coach, but there's a lot of other coaches, and so there's a lot of chatter, about cricket. And someone might say something, and then I'll say, well, I'll steal that. Thank you very much. And then I'm also on a whole lot of different forums and learning. We're learning from each other. And Gary Kirsten's a great driver of that, and he's got a whole lot of coaches on the forum, and he gets guest speakers in. And so, you've got to make sure that you're current and you up to date, and you learn and you read about cricket and read about sports, and you that's how you learn, and that's how you generate your toolbox, is by putting yourself, and it takes time. Outside of your work, you've got to make sure that you're current with certain trends, and it takes time for you to go. And there's lots on YouTube. You can get so much these days on the internet. It's incredible, that you can learn very quickly from other people, where in the past it had to be word of mouth, and you had to be in someone's company, where now you can go onto YouTube, and I use YouTube a lot, and look at certain coaches or situations, or playing and motivational talks, and you learn from other people.
And what is your motivation, your driver to wake up in the morning and do what you do every single day that you do it?
I'm very fortunate because really I haven't really worked a day in my life because I love cricket. I probably, in England they call them cricket badges. He's a person that he's just fanatical about cricket, and he will know all the stats of this player. He'll know what bat that one uses. You know those guys. I was one of them. I was one of those guys, and I was very fortunate. I was born into cricket. My dad was a coach. He was a teacher, but he coached cricket. And every breakfast, he was talking cricket to me. He was a bigger fanatic than I was. And, and so my motivation is that I've been fortunate that I'm doing something I love, but I've got other things in my life that is also important. My family is important. My farm is important to me. I've got a farm in the Eastern Cape, and I love my cattle. I've got cows, and people might laugh and think he's a farmer. I'm a farmer, but it gives me a complete break from cricket, because I think we can also get too absorbed in what we do that we don't rest our brains. And and so the motivation for me is twofold: is to have a happy life outside of cricket and develop something that I really love in my farming, but also to win cricket matches. This is what I do. I coach cricket, and I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do, and I have for a long time, and I'll continue as long as that desire is there. And so right now the motivation is there because I'm doing what I love doing. But it's hard, Chris. My family are in South Africa. I've got one son in Pretoria. I've got another son in Grahamstown. And my wife is on the farm. And I'm in England. And so who knows? I might not see them for 7 months. And last year, while I was here, I didn't see them for 7 months. And so it's a very lonely life that we lead as cricket coaches. And it's not an easy life. And it's not one that you choose, because I stumbled on this. I didn't. I'm actually a teacher by trade. I should be at teaching at a school. That's what I should be doing. But very often our lives take a different path. And my path was cricket. And, it's been a fantastic life, but it hasn't been easy. Family-wise, it hasn't been easy. But I'm very fortunate to be where I am in my profession, which is cricket.
As you were speaking of the separation that you have to go through, I was now thinking of, in the past year, things have really sort of changed, and cricket has now have had to have biosecure bubbles, and players have been really taking a toll. Those bubbles have been taking a toll on the players. And how do you see those bubbles going forward?
Well, I can only hope that worldwide these vaccines are rolled out, throughout the world, because if it just stays in England and, and the sort of developed countries, well, then we'll never defeat COVID. So we'll always have these bubbles. And living in a bubble is very isolated and very lonely, and it's not a normal existence. And so they are very difficult, and you've heard a number of players that have found it very difficult, mentally, to cope with these bubbles, and it's not normal. And I can only hope that this, the vaccines worldwide is accelerated, and so we can look to a life beyond bubble, because, it's difficult living in a bubble. Right now, cricket in England is in a bubble. I'm with my team and I can only be with my team, and we go and play and there's no one watching. And, there's no less pressure. The pressure's still there, but it's just very insular. And you don't see other people and you don't socialize, because I can't see other people with the fear of bringing COVID into the team. So, it's a very lonely existence. But it's not only cricket. I think it's, all businesses have the same, have the same issues. But it's not easy.